Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underrated, underseen, or sometimes, well, we just want to talk about them. I'm the host for this week, Josh Hallam, and I'm joined, as ever, by Alice Oliver. Alice, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh. And yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very excited. You know I'm excited, don't you, Alice?
Oh, I know why you're excited. I'm also very, very excited.
I am just a host standing in front of a guest, asking them to talk about a film.
Nice.
We are joined by the wonderful Kate Mason. Kate, how you doing? You okay?
Hello, that was so beautifully delivered, man. I was about to just throw it all in with you.
People say I'm an amateur. Anyway, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Having a good week. I don't feel like there's anything of note to tell you. I should have come up with some more useful podcast chatter, shouldn't I? Are we allowed to? Am I allowed to say when it is? It's not really
Yes, okay.
We're about to go off on Easter holiday, so I'm heading on a jaunt. So I'm feeling good about that. Although packing, what the hell? I can't pack.
Where
the most
are you
difficult thing
going?
ever.
If you don't mind saying.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to Spain. I'm going to Barcelona.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to see some football. I'm going to see Barcelona Girona on Monday night. That's just for fun.
I am so jealous.
Yeah, I think it's going to be wicked, and it's hot as well. By the way,
I bet it's roasting.
I was supposed to go to the Camp Nou for my 30th, and COVID ruined it.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
I know. I was
so sorry for your loss, John.
Barcelona's
COVID,
loss,
they say
Alice.
it was bad, but really what was the terrible thing was Josh's missed trip.
Who was the real victim? Lots of people or me who could go to that football ground another time. But anyway, so we always start with a completely random question. So I'll come to you first, Alice. Alice, what's the best board game?
Well, this is a difficult question, Josh. As you know, I play a hell of a lot of board games, but I think the one I've got to pick, because it's one that I can just always go back to, I always enjoy playing it no matter what mood I'm in, is Wingspan. Have you heard of Wingspan?
No.
I haven't heard of Wingspan.
No. So basically, the aim of the game is to score points by collecting loads of different types of birds, and the birds lay eggs and they eat various things. And you're just like a bird. What's the official word for a bird watcher? I feel like there is
Twitcher. Are you a Twitcher? Is that the word?
I thought
not
it
a
was
Twitcher. Is
ornithologist.
that one though as well? I think it's what you're saying, Josh. Yeah, that sounds accurate.
I mean,
so
I don't know,
why would
I know that.
Sounds a bit more official than Twitcher. But Twitcher is definitely something to do with birds, because you sit in a little hide and I think, twitch the things that you're hidden from the birds.
Maybe that does sound
I always
quite
thought
legit,
it sounds
actually.
quite pervy, right?
It does, yeah. I'm a twitcher, the curtain twitcher. But yeah, Wingspan is brilliant, but also just started playing Arc Nova, which you've probably not heard of, but that's great as well. That's where you run a zoo, so you have to get the most appealing zoo, and you've also got to conserve the animals, so you get the animals, but then if you release them into the wild, you get more points and stuff. That one's great. But yeah, I could go on. I love board games, but yeah, I'll settle on Wingspan
animal
for that.
themed stuff there.
Love the animal themed board games. It's my fave for sure.
I've never heard. That is not what I thought you was going to say.
What did you do? Monopoly.
Yeah.
Scrabble.
Nothing wrong with that.
Sorry, Kate. Sorry if that was your answer.
I've never heard either of those.
No,
but the second one sounds like a video game, like The Sims or something.
I mean, I suppose you could maybe compare it to something like that.
How do you rate the best zoo?
Different animals have different levels of appeal. So say you've got like a rhino or an elephant, that's really appealing. So you'll get 8 points of appeal or whatever it might be.
Surely
or
the
if you've just got
giraffe is the most appealing.
Yeah,
giraffe's really appealing. But then if you've just got a little lizard,
goats.
Yeah, goat. They do petting. You do have a petting zoo in the zoo.
What's the lowest rated animal in the game?
I think maybe some of the really little lizards, that you would struggle to see in the reptile house when you're looking in. They're quite low appeal, but also the petting zoo animals they're only appealing if there are other petting zoo animals in there. So if you've got a goat just on its own, not very appealing. But if you've got a goat and a sheep and a little horse, very appealing for some reason.
Right.
It's a team game.
You can go in and hang out.
Yeah, exactly.
Pet and zoos are a team game. They've always said that.
They are. Otherwise, it's just a goat
be
standing
lonely,
there.
wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Do you care in the game about whether the animals are lonely or not? Because I happen to know that alpacas, for example, they're herd animals. They're sometimes in petting zoos, so you need to have more than one. You'd have to, otherwise the alpaca would get depression.
Well, funny.
Alpaca sadness.
Funny, alpaca sadness. Funny you should bring that up though, because there are animals, I think the alpaca is one of them, where you can put them in enclosures with other animals, but not necessarily just other alpacas. So I think you can put the alpaca in an enclosure with like a moose or a deer, just other herbivores.
This sounds amazing, Josh. I can't believe you took the piss out of this incredible game.
It's brilliant.
What's
It's
it
brilliant.
called?
Arc
Best Zoo or something?
Nova. Arc Nova.
That's such a cool name for the concept of the
I know.
of the game.
I know. But yeah, it's brilliant.
Oh, so it's like Noah's Ark, right? Like Noah's Ark. Is that
Exactly,
what
like
it is?
Noah's Ark.
Right,
And then,
right,
yeah. What about you, Josh?
Monopoly. No,
Yeah.
mine. So I really like. Have you ever played Hues and Clues?
Oh, I haven't actually.
So that's mine. So it's
Whoa.
one my sister introduced me to. And what it is it's a big board full of coloured squares, a little bit like choosing paint or something like that. And you all have your little pieces, and you put like a card down over a colour when it's your turn, and then you get one word to describe the colour. That obviously you can't be like red, but you could be like, you could say like strawberry.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone has to put their counter where they think the closest colour to the colour you're describing is. So obviously it's a game of describing colour without using the word red or blue or green or whatever. So you could be like, I don't know, if you got green, you could say grass, and then on your second turn you get two words. So but you can't say grass again. So you could say like beer bottle or like something like that. And so it's like it's a game of description. So that's quite a good one, especially if you're drinking, because your descriptive powers as you go on get worse and worse.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that's quite a good one. I did it on New Year's Eve a few years ago, and my friends, who aren't really my friends anymore, kept moving my piece back because I didn't notice, because I was trying so hard to think of words. And then also, I suppose, little shout out for Cards Against Humanity, if that does
count as a board game?
I suppose it's a card game, isn't it?
Card game,
hence
yeah.
the title.
Yeah.
So I'd say those two. Yeah, Hues and Clues. Let's say Hues and Clues. What about you, Kate?
Well, I'm not. I feel like you guys are very educated board gamers. Board gamers.
Gamers, I think. Yeah.
Gamers, just gamers. That's what you should be calling yourselves. So I don't feel like I've got enough of a repertoire to really lay down a massive claim for any board games apart from, the really effing mainstream ones.
The
so
classics.
Like, you
But
know,
that's fine. That's
we've
fine.
all
I
got
shouldn't have
memories.
scoffed.
We've all got memories of people like trying to sort of steal, like rip our cards out of our hands in Monopoly in sheer aggression. Bobby, if you're listening, I still haven't forgiven that. When you ripped
Bobby.
Park Lane. Oh my God. Unbelievable. I've never seen rage like it. But,
The rouse.
but yeah, so I feel like the ones, all the main ones are those that I have the most memories of, because I haven't gone down these like great niches that you two seem to have followed down. But I have to say I'm open to being invited to any kind of board game parties that people might enjoy. I also like a bit of Trivial Pursuit.
That's a good one. I love
That's
Trivial
quite
Pursuit.
cerebral, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a classic.
Like family people always want to play that. So
Yeah,
that they
that's
can,
a good one.
Is around Christmas, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, although I find that quite stressful, because the game that we have at home is like from the 70s. So you know how all of the different different sections, like history's probably all right if you're good at history, but then there's like media or so, I can't remember what it's called, and it'll all be stuff like who died in EastEnders last season, and you're like, I wasn't even born in the 70s. So my parents do always win.
I've got a bit of a board game confession for you, Alice. I've never ever played Scrabble
Really?
in my whole
That
life.
is interesting.
In my whole life,
That is
I don't know
interesting.
why, because we're not a particular board game family. We might be more of a card game family, hence my Cards Against Humanity. But I don't know. I've never played it. I've only played Cluedo once as well, because I wouldn't be able to tell you the rules.
No, I don't think I've ever played Cluedo. Scrabble's fine, but Boggle is better.
Boggle's good.
Right.
I've done
Love Boggle.
Frustration. Remember that one?
Oh yeah, I used to play that. Yeah.
I was going to go for that one where you have to take the little bits of people's like heart and lungs and stuff out.
Operation.
But I don't think that counts
Yeah.
as a...
Yeah, it does. That's definitely one. That's definitely
You
one.
can have that.
Thanks very much.
Okay then, so we will move on to talking about this week's film then, which is Notting Hill from 1999. So spoiler warnings if you've not seen a more than 20-year-old film. So Kate, you chose Notting Hill. Interested to know why you picked this one. So What is it about for those who haven't seen Notting Hill, and why did you pick it apart from the fact that we asked you to come on the podcast?
Because I love it. I love it so much. I thought I maybe should pick like a football film. So I was toying with Escape to Victory, which is also a great film.
Good shout.
But I just thought this would be... I basically just wanted to sit down and watch it again because it's such a soothing film. I think everything turns out right, and there's lots of nice. I was actually a bit nervous about watching it back because some of those sort of 90s films are a little bit don't stand the test of the time, and they're a bit sexist and all that sort of shit. But this actually, I suppose the thing is, in this one, from a sexism perspective, don't think there is any, because the woman is the character who has all the control, right? All the power. She's a film star. He's a dude who inexplicably lives an incredibly affluent life by running a small tiny bookshop that never seems to sell any books, and again inexplicably has limited itself to just selling travel books, but fine. And then they meet in passing, and the two of them are wowed by each other's wit and sexiness, I guess.
Yeah.
And they go through trials and tribulations, mainly due to the fact that she's really famous, and also there don't seem to be mobile phones. I guess there weren't. And in the end, well, it's all lovely.
Yeah, very good. So would you say it's underrated or underseen, or did you just want to talk about it?
Well, I just want everyone to have seen it, now. So I guess when it was so... what I didn't realise actually is that it is in fact critically acclaimed. So not until I'd already suggested it did I realise it's not actually underrated at all. Everyone's like, yeah, it's bloody good. So I failed on that account. But I thought, like you say, it's over 20 years old, right? And so I feel like there's going to be loads of people who don't even know about it. So let's get them on it right now.
We've definitely had that before, haven't we, Alice? Where it's like a film was successful at the time, but actually are people going back and watching it now? Which... the nature of cinema and how much content there is nowadays. They definitely, people will definitely go and watch Notting Hill, a bit, but are people sitting down and watching it a lot? Maybe not. What do you think, Alice? So, what do you think?
You could say maybe it's a little bit underseen.
Maybe.
With modern audiences. Not probably with the
guys.
audiences at the time, though.
No, for sure.
Okay, then. So, Alice, going into this one then, had you seen it?
So, I think maybe, yes, I had seen it, but I definitely wasn't paying much attention when I watched it. I didn't really remember anything about it, and I did not think I was going to enjoy it. I went into this, Kate, with really low expectations. I was like, oh my God, am I going to hate this? And I'm going to have to talk to Kate about it whilst hating it. But I was actually really pleasantly surprised, and I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to.
Yay!
Yeah, I was really happy about that as well.
Yeah.
What about you, Josh? I feel like this is one you've definitely seen.
I've seen this film loads of times.
Yeah, this seems right up your alley.
So I was watching it, and I was thinking, I think this is the first rom-com I ever saw.
Wow.
I think it might be because I'm about the right age. I would have been 10 or something when it came out. So I remember it coming out on video and maybe my parents renting it or buying it and then watching it. So and I definitely remember the adverts on the telly for it because they were all the bit where he goes out and all the journalists are there. And obviously the Ronan Keating song was in the charts as well. So
oh my God, guys, by the way, also, not to tell you that I've chosen a great film and it's so great that we're doing it. But the thing is that happens after you watch Notting Hill, now, is that you then walk around, because I'm based in London, right? And you then walk around, but any big city, I reckon, British city, you walk around and it kind of feels a bit like you might be in Notting Hill. And I was at King's Cross. You suddenly get the music, because the soundtrack's so great and of its time. And you get all the sense of the tracks going on around you. And I was leaving King's Cross yesterday, right? And someone was the busker was literally outside playing She.
By Elvis Costello,
Yeah, the bit where it's when she leaves and he's all sad for ages. And I was just walking around and the rain has just stopped and the sun was coming out. And I was like, I'm in a movie, guys. It's weird.
And then you walked into a travel book shop and...
Yeah, I nearly didn't make it to this recording. It's been a whirlwind.
Okay, then let's get stuck into it then. Alice. So you've already touched on that you liked it there. So what did you like?
So in general, I just quite admire like the whole general feel of the film. Like it feels really simple in its concept and execution. It's pretty unremarkable. It's not groundbreaking, but it feels so endearing and charming. It all feels quite stripped back, like the locations, the set, the costumes, even the jokes and the humor are all quite low stakes. Everything feels really easygoing and really enjoyable. And it felt pleasant to sit through something like this where I didn't really feel that intensely about anything. So a few of the films we've done this year, and certainly some of my choices, have been so intense that it's almost like taking a physical effort to sit through them. Not in a bad way, but you just feel a bit exhausted afterwards. Whereas this was like the complete opposite of that. And it was just relaxing and enjoyable to watch and just really light, if you know what I mean.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's certainly very light, and you are right. Like some of the films we've done this year, because we started off this year, Kate, by doing January was all uplifting, feel good films because it's January, and then I think something above our heads went, I'm going to pick some dark shit now, and then a bit before you know it, you've picked some dark ones this year. You've done like Runaway Train,
and then the wall right after
pretty,
each other, and it was a bit like, oh fucking hell. Yeah.
I needed a little lie down after some of them, but yeah, I know what you mean. But then something. I think what's easy to forget is when you say something like escapist about a film, you think like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, where something transports you to a world. But these films do that as well. Do you know what I mean? And they might be obviously more naturalistic, more relatable, more real, but they're still escapist because you see these guys. Obviously, it's quite unrealistic. A man who has a shop in London might get suddenly be going out with the most famous movie star in the world, but there's still that relatability, and I think they have that in the characters, and they do it with the supporting cast. So if you look at like Emma Chambers, who obviously sadly no longer with us, plays his sister, and then his friends Gina McKee and Tim McKerney, and then I'm going to say it wrong, Alice. So what's his flatmate called?
Chris Evans. So you did it right last time. I'm sure you did.
Chris Evans.
Is this our fourth Chris Evans film as well? He pops up a lot, doesn't he? That one.
Yeah. Oh, Welsh, are we? All right. Right. So I quite like the supporting characters, and I think they bring that you sort of want to be mates with them. Like you want to be sitting around like they are.
Yeah.
Something wrong with this yogurt. That bit always makes you laugh. It's not yogurt. That's mayonnaise.
It's not yogurt. It's mayonnaise.
So, Kate, what do you like? What do you like about this film? Or is it just one of those things that's nostalgic for you? It's got a nice little place in your heart. What is it?
I think Alice is, really makes one of the key points about it. It's like a genuinely nice experience, and I like the way that it's not. There's some lovely scenes to it, but like it carries you along with it so easily. But actually, to be honest, I think the scripting is amazing. Like the kind of it's naturalistic, but then, like you said, Alice, it's not like hard-hitting jokes. They're not trying to go close to the wire. But the dialogue particularly between the two main characters, between Anna and, oh my goodness, I've just forgotten
William.
what his actual name is. Because in my head it's just Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant,
and William. Like it's really. God, I'm going to sound like soppy little wanker, but it's really just like lovely. It's the way that they kind of match the styles of the two people they're talking to, and the way people bounce off each other. It's really clean. That stuff would have been difficult to write, and it's an art form, but you don't feel it. It feels like just a conversation that you could just have with your pals. But it's really tightly written, and I love that, and I like the way that. Also, I like the way it's interesting the way what's this late 90s. One of the main characters is just like in a wheelchair. It's not a kind of preachy like, that's a massive part of the storyline that we have to be like
draw attention
I don't know.
to.
Exactly. It's just like, yes, there just happens to be one of the characters who is in a wheelchair, and here are some of the challenges. Like at the end when they're getting in the car, the tiny little car, and Tim McInerney decides again. I don't know why I don't know any of the real names of these people, but fine. Decides she's got to come with them, and I think I found that quite kind of heartwarming.
It's endearing, isn't it? It's very, and I think Richard Curtis does that. So this is the second Richard Curtis film we've done, isn't it, Alice? Because we did About Time. We did About Time last year, because you weren't a massive fan of About Time, were you? And that definitely, they almost took Notting Hill and Four Winds and a Funeral with About Time and poured some honey on it. Like, that's how sweet it is. Do you know what I mean? So, but this is a little bit more dialed back, and it's obviously a little bit more early on in certainly his film writing career, because he was massive in telly throughout all the 90s and still is and stuff like that. But I think what they do really well in this is that dialogue that you say, Kate. So he's good at writing characters, and when they talk, it's not like they're acting. So it's almost like that. So that what he'll do is he'll do things like Russell T Davies does this really well as well. He gives characters little things that are almost pre-existing bits of dialogue that you feel like existed before the film started and exist after the film ends. So if you watch in this all the way through it, the Hugh Grant's character and James Dreyfus, who work in the bookshop and with his friends, they keep going classic. Like
yeah.
Which is not a thing that it's not something that I would say, but it's like, that's what these characters do. They say, classic to each other. The way that groups of friends have those little in-jokes that if you were on the outside looking in, you'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think that's what it does really well.
That's so cool, and that makes actually a lot of sense of one of my favourite scenes. Although I actually really struggle with cringe moments in films, but I still think the thing where he goes to the press junket for the film, it absolutely kills me every time. And I can't, because he's talking to some character, and he finally feels like, so basically he goes to this. If you guys haven't seen it, listening, if he goes to this press junket, he thinks he's going to meet the movie star. She's suggested, come along, we can hang out. And then it turns out that actually he's found himself in this thing, and he has to go around pretending to be a journalist from Horse and Hound, because that's the first thing he can think of, because he's not very quick, I don't think. And so he goes in, and finally he's getting to the crux of the matter, and he's like asking some good questions, he thinks, and he's like, did you identify with your character? And the bloke who has a translator with him speaks in a language I can't understand for several moments, and then the translation comes back, no, because he's playing a flesh-eating carnivorous robot. And at which point, sorry, this is a long explanation, but he goes, classic. And basically because that's been built up throughout the course of the film so far, I don't know, like doubly empathise or feel like it's an in-joke between us, the viewer, and him, the character. If that makes sense.
You do it. People do it in stand-up comedy. You sow the seeds early on, and then you come back and you refer to it, and then it makes people go, oh yeah, and then you start, and then you start thinking. They do it with the. It starts, doesn't it? Because his colleague in the bookshop starts telling him a really rubbish story about recognising someone, and then he goes, "It's not a classic anecdote, is it? It's not a classic. No, it's not a classic." And I think that's what Richard Curtis does really well in this and in Four Winds and a Funeral, which I know he's had his critics about what the sort of type of people he's portraying, but there's nothing wrong with that. The idea has come from his head, so he can write what he wants in that sense, I think. But he does that really well. He portrays these people. It's like, these people are definitely friends. And I think he does it really well. Whereas other stuff, you can definitely watch something like other films of this ilk and be like, they don't know each other. Like, or you can watch characters and be like, there's no way those two fancy each other. Or they've got no chemistry.
Often the case.
So, did you think it was funny, Alice? We've done the rom. What about the com?
Definitely some moments of it, I think. So just thinking about it, probably the funniest bit for me, or one of the funniest bits that just really lasts with me, is right at the beginning where Rhys Ifans is going on a date and he's not sure what to wear. So he keeps putting on these T-shirts. He comes down, they're really inappropriate. I can't remember what they say on him. And then he shows
one of them is something like, I love blood.
Yeah. And it's got like a 3D sort of bit of a monster
like
thing
dragon
sticking out of it. Yeah. So he comes down, he shows you guys, and he's like, how about this? And he's like, oh, not quite romantic, is it? Like, and I just think, like, the comedy from that comes from his reaction. Like, he's not going, oh, that looks ridiculous, mate, what you doing? Like, go and get changed. He's trying to be nice. It's like, it's not in him to just kind of slag his fashion taste off to his face or whatever. So he's like, oh, it doesn't really scream romance, does it? Or whatever it is that he says. Exactly. But that's really funny. And then he comes down and he's wearing one that's a bit better. That's just like, I think it says, I love you, or just
You're
something.
You're the most beautiful woman in the world.
Yeah. And then he turns around and then there's something else horrendous on it. That moment really stands out for me. But the bit that you said, Kate, as well, the whole bit where he's at the press junket is so beautifully awkward. that a lot of the humor that comes from that, like when he's speaking to the director and he's like, oh, I really enjoyed the horses in this film. And he's like, oh, it was set in space, so there were no horses. And I was like, oh, it's like, will there be horses in the next film or whatever it is that he says? But that whole sequence where he's moving from room to room and speaking to the different people involved with the film was just so brilliantly awkward, and I loved it. And you could see Hugh Grant does such a good job, but it's a bit overused of that awkward face that he does, where he's like eyebrows tight in, he looks a little bit lost, and he's like, oh, and he has that face throughout most of the film, but like in those moments, it just really conveyed his feelings, and you feel it as well so strongly as the viewer. But yeah, I thought it was funnier than I thought it was going to be, but it isn't these big, over the top, massive, you must laugh here kind of jokes. It's so much more subtle than that. But it's sort of expert writing, really. It's all in the script.
It's that social awkwardness, like you say. Is it like my favourite bit in that hotel bit is when he's interviewing the child actor, and it's Misha Barton. And she's like 10 or something.
She looks identical to how she always has.
And he says to her, what's been your highlight of the 50 films or something you've made? She goes, working with Leonardo. And he goes, Da Vinci? And that bit, I was like, well, he's been dead for 500 years at this point. Like, what? Like, you must know it's DiCaprio, but he's so
out, mate.
awkward.
You're freaking out. Yeah,
he's
exactly.
So but then it's like back to the Rhys Ifans character. He's a dick. Like Spike's behaviour through the whole film. But he's so awkward he can't be. At one point, he sells out Julia Roberts, or it never explicitly says that he does. But it's strongly hinted where she says well, actually, no, he does, because he does say,
they talk about it.
I may have told a few people down the pub. Doesn't it?
That was a terrible Welsh accent.
Thank you. 3 years of drama. But yeah,
sorry, I'm always impressed if people can like try a Welsh accent anyway.
It's because I do a podcast with Alice every week.
I don't have a Welsh accent. I don't know why.
You could put it on.
Can you put it on for us?
No, I can't, honestly. I would just insult the whole of my country.
The whole of your home country.
I know, but I don't sound anything like him.
Rhys Ifans' character, it's like he acts bad all the way through the film. Like the fact that he just like won't take his messages for him. There's the bit where he's lost his glasses and then he finds them later on. The only good thing he does is stop traffic for them to get to the Savoy.
Maybe that's his like redemption, isn't it? That's his redemption at the end. He comes through at the end.
But
he does, and also he's going to marry his sister.
Oh yeah,
that's quite. So you think what that does again? Maybe that's another example of the quite slick writing or the understated writing. Alice is like that moment paints a whole psychological picture in the background that we haven't been a party to. But the fact that, she's managed to kind of semi fall in love in this slightly implausible way, but it still kind of fits with the chaos of her and of him. And so then you add that whole background of whatever it must have been that they were getting up to get together, just hanging out and running around. Because you remember they turn up into the shop, you start seeing them together a bit more, but they're not like a couple.
And then when she says she's got engaged, the sort of, it seems to be that are they even together at that point? Because she just goes, by the way, it's you, and he goes, all right, groovy.
It's adorable. I don't know why it's so adorable. It's because it's probably not great, is it? How would you feel if someone just suddenly accosted you with the news that you were engaged?
We're getting married. Dinner? What are we? But I know what you mean. But no, it's that social awkwardness. It is this man will bite his lip until his chin falls off. And how far can you push that English repression and that politeness? And I think this is the best that he does it in a film, Hugh Grant and Richard Curtis. There's obviously there's the famous moment in Four Winds at a Funeral with the couple and he's stuck under the bed or he's stuck in the wardrobe. If you don't know that bit, then look it up. But this is consistently throughout the film. I think this is the best he does, that British sort of social awkwardness. And I think a lot of it is also down to the fact that it's, she's American. So they make quite a big thing of the fact that she's American and he's British and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's really funny. I'll tell you something else I quite liked as well is there's quite a decent sort of exploration of fame in this without it being too on the nose. So, it's quite, if you think it's quite progressive, because she is essentially almost the target of revenge porn. Not quite, but getting there, that idea. You could watch this now, I think. If you watch this now, in the age that we're in, you might go, oh my God, that used to be a thing. Like the papers used to try and do that. And obviously it's both better and worse now in different ways. I don't know. But like they get hold of these pictures of her and then she comes and hides. Like that's quite a grim thing that happens to her. If you think of that, you know, that very much happened in the press not that long ago, unfortunately, to people like Jennifer Lawrence, didn't it? It was all the iCloud hack from about, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that. So to deal with this in 1999 is quite interesting. So I quite like that idea. Like I like that idea of because the other thing I noticed as well, I've never noticed before, is this film is sort of a little bit in terms of status. It's a reverse Pretty Woman.
Yeah, exactly.
So she is the god, you know, she's the god coming down from Mount Olympus to the mortals. Whereas Pretty Woman is the other way around, isn't it? So I thought it's quite interesting to do that with Julie Roberts. It's very much that thing of using the baggage of an actor and being like, you know what we mean. She's basically playing herself in this film. Yeah, at this point.
On the fame thing, Alice, did you like because another bit that I think is quite funny is that, and funny cringe, is the scene where she goes and meets his friends. Just like he takes her as his date. That's like pretty much the second time they've ever hung out. Yeah. And that is very funny about the fame, because I think they pretty much capture all the reactions that people have, all of the main categories of reaction that people have to fame, like being completely oblivious and a bit of an oath.
Yeah. No, not what does he say? Like, what do you do then? It's like, oh, I'm an actress.
The
and
wages
he's like,
are a scandal, aren't they?
Yeah. And like he says, doesn't he imply that he thinks that she does like Amdram or something?
It's like PG Woodhouse, isn't it? So it's like, it'd be the sort of thing that he's talking about. It's like Amdram or local theatre and stuff like that. Because in that bit, she actually says her actual salary, doesn't she? So
I think in the end she gets a bit tired of it, because she's pretty generous as a guest to the rest of them, right? But that guy also, that's another great bit of characterization from the Bernie character, that guy, because he is a stockbroker or
he's
something
a banker or something, isn't he?
It's so classic for that to be his, like, sorry, no disrespect to hopefully you've got lots of listeners from all sorts of walks of life, and I know and there's lots of nice bankers, but that is quite a characteristic style of interlocution, if you know what I mean. To start banging on about how someone does a bit of an interesting job and to start banging on about how much they may or may not earn. Like, it's quite a characteristic way of doing it from that style of
apparently person. In that scene the script said something like $8 million. And they kept doing the take, and she just in the end went $15 million. And then and then the director or someone said to her, "Why did you change the number?" And she said, "I wanted to be more reflective of the truth,
reality."
So obviously that's what she got paid for the film.
Nice.
So,
Jesus Christ. But and then there's the sister obviously going out, like, losing her mind. I mean, incredibly embarrassing. Like, poor old William. To be honest, I felt like William would have. That's a bit like Pride and Prejudice, isn't it? Like the way that the siblings are kind of embarrassing you into possibly losing your love. But yeah, that was really fun. And then the kind of elegant way that the other two, the couple, deal with it is the Tim McInerney like shakes her hand and then it's like, Anna, Scott. So yeah, I think I really enjoyed that scene as well. It's soppy, isn't it, as well? Because towards the end you can see she's sort of finding what a normal life looks like and feeling drawn in by that. And
I think what I quite like about that scene as well is they make a joke out of not making her sympathetic. So they take you down an avenue where you think, they're going to be like, it's so hard being a movie star because I've got to look good and I've had plastic surgery. And, she does say she's had some genuinely shit stuff happen to her as well. But then they all just go, no, sorry, no way. Absolutely no way. So, and that's where it brings in those likable characters, I think. Alice, anything you didn't like about the film? Are you gonna break Kate's heart?
Not really, to be honest. So there was only really one thing, and it was quite a general thing that sort of encompassed the whole film. So for me personally, all the characters felt a bit two-dimensional, and I didn't really feel any sort of significant connection to any of them. But I do wonder if that goes hand in hand with how relaxed I felt whilst watching it. So you can't obviously have it all. You can't have like this lovely, light-hearted, enjoyable experience, but then also like have these deeply penetrating connections to your characters. You know what I mean? So it's like, which would you rather? But like William especially, almost everything he says is like a one-liner. And he has one facial expression, like I said, the sort of weird kind of frowny thing. And then it's like the writers sort of wanted him to be so over the top, charming and cute that they forgot to give him a personality. Like everything is a line. Like everyone he's talking to, it's just everything felt like a line. Like I don't feel like I got to know him as a person at all.
I do know people like that though.
Yeah, they do exist.
Yeah.
Is it Hugh Grant? You don't know Hugh Grant?
No, it's for me. I thought that felt quite authentic, and I think, to be honest, Julia Roberts should be worried about the presumably boarding school, public school education that this man has had, and has not enabled him to really get that deep about his emotions or his ability to talk things through in anything other than a sort of self-deprecating joke. So yeah, I know what you mean, but I suppose again I added this whole load of hinterland to him where it's just like he's so buttoned up, like you say, that being charming all the time is almost like defense mechanism for the fact that he's so yeah, I hope they have a happy life, and because she's pregnant in the last scene, isn't she?
Is,
so I hope that he does learn to speak a bit more about his emotions. Maybe that could have been a second
Notting Hill 2.
Notting Hill 2.
The therapy years. How many 90s Hugh Grant rom-coms have you seen, Alice? Or is it just this one?
No.
Have you seen Four Weddings and a Funeral?
I haven't seen Four Weddings and a Funeral.
And have you seen Mickey Blue Eyes?
No.
So if you watch them and then watch this again, you'll understand that it's not. I understand what you're saying, but that is very much the 90s Hugh Grant character.
Okay.
To the point where he would even acknowledge it himself in interviews. He's quite famously a little bit cantankerous, or he can be when he's interviewed and stuff like that. But I've definitely seen interviews with him where around this time he said, "I think everyone knows I'm famous for a certain method and a certain approach, and that is that the bumbling, charming Britishman." To the point where, for example, if you watch, I think there might be like a Simpsons or Family Guy joke from around the time where they're watching a film called Hugh Grant, What's My Appeal?
I mean, that sounds Family Guy for sure.
And it's that sort of thing. So if you watch other ones, it might actually, of all the ones, if you go back, he's probably the most rounded character of all the ones. Because they're all, if you went, this is all the same guy. It's all the same guy, or whatever. And he's gone from being in all these films. You'd be like, oh yeah, it's definitely the same guy.
Probably one of the problems is that up until this point, so 999, so I watched a lot of action, a lot of horror, a lot of sci-fi as a child, with a lot of very intense characters who, if you think about Jack from The Shining or Sarah Connor and that, do you know what I mean? And
he's not like them, is he? Let's be honest.
Exactly. So when those are the kind of people that I'd been exposed to, so then someone like Hugh Grant is like, oh, he's just a cute, funny little caricature, isn't he?
If you're thinking about who do you want to save from a Terminator, Sarah Connor or William Thacker, who runs a travel bookshop, you're dead if you're picking William, aren't you?
Exactly.
Let's
and I've always said that.
You've always said I wouldn't trust Hugh Grant's character in Notting Hill to save me from a robot apocalypse. Yep. Is there anything else for you, Alice?
There isn't, to be honest. It was just an enjoyable time, a lovely, light-hearted,
a lovely old time.
It was, and a pleasant surprise.
I feel like I kind of wish we'd watched it all together with a bottle of wine, because I feel like we would have just had a really perfect, it's a lovely old time.
Perfect sort of film for that as well, though, isn't it? It is that sort of Saturday night, just chilling out kind of thing.
It's a good date night film, good film to watch with mates, whatever it is you're doing. Absolutely, yeah.
So was there anything that you didn't like, Josh, or that you would change?
I mean, I have so much affection for this film. I always try and be balanced, as you know. It was difficult, but I suppose I did notice there's a few conveniences, isn't there? There's a few why does that happen? Oh, just because it does. So, for example, there's absolutely no way those blokes in the restaurant would not know she was sat behind them.
I think I totally fell for that.
There's no, and then she goes over on IMDb though. By the way, it says that wasn't in the script; it was improvised. I was like, well, Sanjeev Bhaskar is one of the actors, so there's it's not improvised, is it? Because they're naming her as a character and not Julia Roberts. So there's that. Or for example, I think she would know not to open the door.
Yeah, me too. I definitely agree with that.
If you've been a movie star for 10 years, you'd be like, fucking hell! What is going on out there?
He didn't say anything either. She was just like, oh, what was that? He was just like, he should have said, there's a swarm of paparazzi out there, don't open the door. But
also,
he didn't. He just
It's
sort of hesitated.
1999. What? He's not hiding an Uber Eats, is he? So what's he hiding? Like, so there was that, or there was the bit in the restaurant. There was bits where she definitely does get recognised in public, and other bits where you're like, she would get recognised in public there.
It'd be non-stop, probably, wouldn't it? In London.
Yeah, like when she's
even
walking
just
back
the
to
walk
a hotel.
home. Even just the walk home from the dinner at the
into the little
sister's
secret
birthday.
gardens. The fact that no one tells him she's got a boyfriend. They all
he
go,
is supposed to be
know.
very like stupid about
That's true,
pop culture sort of
but they
things,
say to him, he said, how was I only one who didn't know she had a boyfriend because I don't read Hello magazine, and all her friends are like, William, and it's like, so no one went, you do know she is
but I
famously
don't
dating
again,
Alec Baldwin.
Maybe my entire sense of how like people's minds work has actually been built on Notting Hill. So this is why I'm creating all of these beliefs for these characters.
You're just waiting for someone to spill orange juice on you.
Yeah. Why won't it happen to me? But I thought that no one believes of his friends that she is a genuine that they are genuinely going to end up together. My assumption is like, imagine if that's, I rock up to dinner with you guys with Brad Pitt. You're not going to be like, hey, Kate, do you not know he's got, I don't know if he has, but you know what I mean? Do you not know that he's got, you just probably be like, bloody hell, give it a go.
Go for it. Rooting for you.
Perhaps you could be like, oh, they must have separated and the papers don't know yet, or...
I don't necessarily think that would be the reaction, to be like, oh, by the way, because presumably they don't think, oh, he's going to go and settle down with Anna Scott and have babies and live on the square with that garden in it. So that was the reason I made in my head. But you're right, there's quite a lot of like conveniences for the situation. But I guess that's quite often true.
Oh god, yeah, there's loads of stuff where you're like there's a film we're going to do next week, which one of my main criticisms is stuff just keeps happening, and they're like, oh yeah, well,
is it Harry Potter?
It's that, magic, innit? But it's like any time travel film, isn't it? We'll just go back and do this, or go forward and do this, or whatever. But and then the final thing is, obviously, I suppose we should point out, famously, not a very good representation of Notting Hill, and very, very white. So Notting Hill, one of the most multicultural, diverse parts of area of London. It's like, no, everyone's sort of just like posh and that.
That is weird. That is weird.
But that's well documented. Like, it was documented even at the time, and here we are now, more than 20 years later. So you can't go back and change it. And times have moved on, and I think it's safe to say cinema is a little bit better at that now. Certainly getting there. Anyway, what about
it is striking. An extension of that, I would say, which is probably another thing that I thought that wasn't so good, although is basically the people with regional with like the Welsh accents, they're the comedy turns. You know what I mean? So it's always like I can't remember what the accent is of the guy who sticks book down his pants
Moran.
to try and
He's
steal
Irish.
it.
Irish.
Irish. Basically all the there's that
to the point where at the end where there's a reporter who asks her about the pictures of her and William, and I was like, oh my god, a northern person, because like he goes, there's some pretty graphic pictures of you from last time you were around me, and I was like, oh my god, Fred Dibner is asking Julia Roberts the question. I was like, but it is very white, it is very upper middle class, or whatever you want to call it, but that is Richard Curtis films.
That's true. I was listening to a really interesting podcast where Caitlin Moran was talking about how some of the criticism she'd had for not speaking to other, because she's a big feminist, she writes a lot about feminist stuff, and I can't remember the full context of it, and I'm sure she's written great stuff about this and can express it far better than I possibly can. But she was talking about some of the criticisms that she'd had about not writing about like the broader, just writing kind of about her own personal experience from her demographic, being white. And she was sort of like, while I take that on, I don't feel as though I'm in a position to write lots about other people's great, I don't feel like it's right that I'm sitting there being like, oh, I'm going to take on, and also like, what am I going to be generalizing for the whole of womankind? Like no man ever has to do that. So
famously all women the same.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
So why can't she just do it? So yeah, that's not exactly the same thing that we're talking about here with Notting Hill. You know,
Yeah, but you're right about what you
it
know.
would have been better. It would have been better with a diverse cast, I think. But if Richard Curtis is writing about the people he knows about, then that's probably okay.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else on the dislikes for us guys, or are we not many? Pretty.
That was
pretty
it for me.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Just the unrealistic impression of how life's going to be. And also it's a tiny bit the Friends thing, isn't it? Of like, they all live in these incredibly nice places in incredibly expensive parts of the world. And that never seems to be a problem.
That house, that house he lives in must be like a £5 million house.
Yeah.
It must be something
I
like
guess,
that. It's like
I guess
3
at the
stories.
time, people say that it was it wasn't a posh area, right? And partly Notting Hill is, now what it is, partly as a result of this film, which I always find is mad. I love that, like seeing how bits of culture then kind of play out in the actual area. I think it's insane.
I've never actually been to Notting Hill. Like I've been to London many times, but I've not been to Notting Hill.
Come on down. We can do a little tour of the. Yes. Yes. Much better than going to a travel bookshop.
You used to live in London as well, didn't you, Alice?
I lived in Wimbledon.
Oh, right.
I don't know where that is in relation to Notting Hill. I don't think I've been to Notting Hill.
It's like you're Wimbledon's southwest, and then Notting Hill's like west, but north of the river, basically.
Right.
So famously inconvenient, not well connected. Those two, those two locations. So if you didn't make it, you don't need to feel bad, especially given that you'd never watched the film before.
No, I know, yeah.
Okay, then, so we can move on to talking about the critical reception then, and we'll sort of decide how we think the ratings come out. So, Alice, obviously you'd never seen it before. How do you think it did critically? I think it's safe to say, commercially, we know it at the time it did pretty well, but what are we thinking critically?
I mean, I reckon it probably did quite well. Overall, I'm trying to sort of figure out whether it was more popular with the audience or with the critics. I reckon critics probably really like Richard Curtis. So I reckon I'd probably give it like a 7, which is really generous for me, Kate. Not just anything gets
that's
a
like
7.
a 9 from me.
Yeah. But I reckon this got it. I mean, it got at least an 8, I'm thinking, and maybe sort of into the low 8. So I'm going to say about 84 or an 8.4 if we're sort of thinking IMDb. And I reckon the critics were more generous than the audience on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay. What about you, Kate? Do you know how it did, or do you have any idea? What would you give it?
I think I did look it up when I was trying to find it to watch it. So, but I can't really remember. I feel like because it's so unedgy, but maybe things weren't. Maybe it would be people would be less critically enthusiastic. But I guess back then maybe that didn't matter, and things like what Alice has talked about the cinematography and some of the writing might have been valued. So, I don't know.
Okay, let's have a look then. So, at the time of recording, I think you'll be quite surprised about this, Alice. On IMDb, so we do IMDb Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb, it gets 7.2 out of 10. So maybe a little bit lower than you thought. The audience on Rotten Tomatoes give it 79%. And you're spot on. The critics give it 84%. So the critics are pretty kind to it. So that averages out at just above 78% or 7.8 out of 10. Okay. So what do we think? So what do you think about that, Kate? Is that fair? Is it underrated? Is it overrated? Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm instinctively feeling like that might be a bit harsh. I don't know if but it's hard, isn't it, to place yourself in the context of the time.
And when you like it as well.
Yeah. Because now, obviously, if somebody made Notting Hill, everyone would just be like, well, this is kind of, what it is. This is obvious and derivative, right? But it was the original thing, right? Yeah. So, I think it kind of set the standard of rom-com, didn't it, really? And again, not a genre I've watched tons and tons of, but the fact that it is funny, I think it basically scores very highly in both the rom and the com, right? So that often doesn't happen. Often it's way too much bloody rom, in my view.
Bloody romance, ruining these perfectly good rom-coms. What about you, Alice?
That feels. I am surprised by the IMDb score and a little bit surprised by the audience score. But overall, if that's coming out at like a high 7, for me, that's probably appropriately rated.
I'd say so. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's underrated for me, but I'm so pleased that I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to, because otherwise this would have been a very different episode. So, because I'm not good at hiding my real thoughts.
No, you shouldn't. But maybe it would have been a great episode. Maybe we would have been going at it. And like,
Kate was fucking shit. Why are you playing that? What do you think, Josh? Then underrated, appropriate?
I think it's about appropriately rated, but I do think that this film might be lost in the next 10 to 20 years, and I think it'd be interesting to revisit it with, say, like our kids or whatever, because if you imagine showing someone this in 10, 15 years time, they might be like, oh my God, this is what like rom-coms were. It might be the same way we look at romance from the early 80s or whatever. So yeah, I'd say that's appropriately rated, but I definitely think it's worth it's worth putting in the old time capsule to be like, this is what a British rom-com was in the 90s.
That's right. It's totally, it represents. Exactly right.
It is, for me, it probably is the British rom-com.
It's pinnacle of the form.
It's this or Four Weddings, isn't it?
It's way better than Four Weddings. Come on.
No, I think it's better than Four Weddings, but if you said what is the British rom-com, I think it'd be between those two.
Yeah. Let's not go down that debate. We've only got...
Well, Kate, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, not at all. That was enough.
Notting Hill with us.
Yeah, it was really fun just relaxing, like you said. That's basically why I picked the film. I can be edgy, guys. I could have done an edgy thing. I could have
what would you
sat
pick?
us through. I would have done what's it called? I'm going to forget what it's called, and then I'm going to sound like I'm just Googling something to be edgy. But there was a film I got obsessed with in lockdown where everything is just done on this one shot through a tiny little kind of villagey place in the middle America, and there's like a UFO.
Is it Super 8?
No,
not Super 8.
Sorry.
So edgy, we don't even know what you're talking about. That's good,
God,
isn't
yes.
it?
I'm gonna try and remember the name of it and send it to you afterwards, because it's definitely worth a look, and it's not very long, so you don't have to commit loads of. But it's like an experience thing. You feel kind of unsettled by it by the end.
Cool.
I still don't really know what it was about, even despite the obvious UFO thing. Yeah.
So where can the guys listening at home look out for your stuff? What have you got going on?
So where can you find me? Well, definitely on my Twitter is @KVL Mason, because there's too many people called Kate kicking around. So I used those are my middle initials, which is a bit weird as I get older.
What's the V? What's the V?
Do you want to guess?
Vivian, Victoria, Valerie, one of those. Violet?
No. Do you know everyone normally says Victoria first? It's Virginia.
Oh, Virginia. Oh, I never would have got that.
I feel like I've seen you put that out, so I wasn't going to guess. I was going to say Veronica or Virginia. I couldn't remember which one it was.
Oh, you don't hear many British Virginias. Definitely associate more with as like an American name, for sure.
Yeah, I
That's
agree. I'm not really sure if they're thinking of it, unless it was like, Virginia Woolf or someone.
Ooh.
Maybe it was. I have to check with my mum. Yeah.
It's just on a podcast. Is my middle name from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
It's like, actually, no, I can't tell that story because it's about someone I work with and he doesn't work in the public eye. Damn! Never mind. But let me tell you, it was a very funny story that you just missed out on. I work with a bunch of guys on the Football Ramble, so that's like a football podcast that I know you've had Jim on as well. So he's one of my pals on there, and I do an interview show with them called The Drop In. This has already been and gone, obviously, the Qatar World Cup, but I also made an audio documentary about the Qatar World Cup, and I guess that's the thing I'm proudest of. So if you do have any interest in looking at it, it starts with I managed to talk to some young women who play football in the country, and that's how I opened the series. And it was unbelievably difficult to obviously get those sorts of people to talk freely. But yeah, we managed it, so that was pretty awesome. And then at the moment, also I write a column in Metro on Fridays. If you want to listen to chat what I think about things in football mainly, then help yourself. Try not to tweet abuse at me. That's never nice. And I've just started working with Eurosport. I'm going to do mountain biking, not me personally. Although they do keep threatening to put me on a mountain bike, which I'm a bit worried about.
Check your contract.
You wear a lot of guards and stuff, so hopefully I'll be all right. It sounds really fun. I could just go really slowly, right? But yes, mainly the TV presenting side rather than the actual mountain biking side.
Where is the audio documentary? Where is that available?
So it's still, you could find it still, I think, by searching Football Ramble inside the Qatar World Cup or Football Ramble Kate Mason or Qatar. Just shove Qatar in there and you should be able to find it. Or I've put the link to all of them on my bio on my Twitter.
I've listened to it and I think it is fantastic. So I did do a shout out on our feeds when it came out. Say I'm a big football fan, big Football Ramble fan as well. So we'll put all the links to all the things Kate's just mentioned there in our feed. But I would say if you're going to check out anything, do check out the Qatar World Cup, even if you don't like football, because it's quite, I'd say, what's the word? Enlightening, scary, terrifying, all those things at the same time, just in terms of gender politics and geopolitical landscapes and all that sort of stuff. Do check it out because I think it's important, especially now that the World Cup's no longer as in the public eye because it's not on, that you listen to it. So go and check it out. Click the link in the episode description as well. I'll put it out there. But all the other stuff as well. But that particularly is the thing I've also listened to. So yeah, it's very, very good.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
Sorry. Kate Mason, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us about Notting Hill.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a lot of fun.
So there we go, another episode in the bag. Thank you very much to Kate, of course, for coming on. It was wonderful to chat with her. As we said in the episode, make sure you check out all the links to her stuff. We'll put it in the episode description, put some links out on social media. Lots of great stuff to check out. I would very much highly recommend the Inside the Qatar World Cup documentary that she made. Alice, we're going to be back next week with another film, aren't we?
We are indeed. How exciting.
Indeed. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, the email address is filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you search for Just Films and That, wherever you find your social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that, we are there. We're on Patreon as well. So if you're on Patreon, head on over and look for us by searching for Just Films and That, and you'll find us. Any support you can give us would be massively appreciated. But you know what? It's great that you listen. Not only can you listen to us, you can also see us on the TV, can't you, Alice?
You can indeed. Every Friday evening from 6 p.m, you can find us on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. You can also find us on Dailymotion, guys, because I've been uploading the videos to Dailymotion. So search Just Films and That in Dailymotion. You'll be able to see what we're all about. Get our faces on your screens, you know you want to.
Yes, lots of ways to hear us, see us, and we'll be back next week with another episode in your ears. Until then, cheerio.
Bye.